Chapter 4. My classmate Carl had gotten out of his house before it was bombed to bits, but his uncle hadn't. Now Carl didn't have a house, or an uncle. Miss Tamarin couldn't even tell us that he had stayed home, as he had no home to stay in. She just said, "Carl will not be in attendance today. It's my hope that he will be with us tomorrow. I'm relieved that all of you are here. I'm glad to see each of you." An emotional statement. People were either not sharing such thoughts or spreading rumors. Our teacher had entertained the idea that some of us might not make it through the night. A frightening thing for any adult to suggest. But Miss Tamarin smiled, and her gladness filled me too. Saying she'd been afraid for us also meant she cared what became of us, that we each still mattered separately, not just our country, but us. We settled into comparing ancient poems from Elian and Norland, our neighbors to the north across the sea. As always, Megs answered all of Miss Tamarin's questions. I didn't answer any. My eyes kept fixing on Carl's empty chair. At the end of the school day, Miss Tamarin handed everyone a form. Many of you have had your 12th birthdays. I'm obligated to give you these. Take them home and discuss this opportunity with your parents. Across the top of the paper was the same call to service as on the posters, with the date the test would take place at our school 3 weeks from now. But the form made promises that the posters had not, that your family would receive 400 orens, the highest unit of our currency, plus 20 a week more while you served. You would be provided, with room and board for the duration of your service, and, at 18, your university education. Room and board, that meant you could no longer be at home. Across the bottom were lines for name, date of birth, and permission from both parents, and the sentence, "I understand that applying to sit the test commits me to service should I be selected." I scrunched up the paper and crammed it into my book bag. I would show it to Mother and Father because I had been asked to, but I didn't want to sign up. I wouldn't go away from home. Several of the boys were excited. On the way out, they mentioned flying aerials and boot camp and seeing some action and finally getting to take part. They'd been wishing for the minimum age of the army to be lower. They were tired of their fathers and older brothers being away while they could do nothing to fight the shortages or defend Soferende. Megs remained in her seat, studying the form. When she noticed me waiting, she folded it carefully and put it inside her bag. Megs, Cami, Eliza Heller, and I left school together. We got to the end of the first block, and I started to slow. "What is it?" Megs asked. I shook my head at her and spoke to my sister instead. "Cami, go home this way. Go straight there, okay?" Cami would be happy and safe with Eliza. It wasn't unusual for them to walk together. The two grabbed hands and started toward home. Meg studied me as I watched them go. "I want to see what happened," I said. "During the night, I mean." "Should we go over there, though?" "Were you told not to?" "No. Me either. Just not to take Cami." Meg's bit her lip, considering. I just want to know what we're hiding from." She nodded. We headed east. In the still rising dust and smoke, our shoes crunched on the cobbles. Overnight, they'd been covered in gravel. Megs reached for my hand and I took hers, glad for the warmth of her fingers. There was no sign of what had been 2 rows of houses, or of homes, of families. Just heaps and heaps of rubble, as if someone had knocked down a mountain. Only a few blocks from where we lived. It could have been our street. Maybe it would be tonight. We continued up the center of the street, as if on a strange conveyor, afraid to stop, afraid to hurry. Spots of orange emerged in the gray, helmets and vests of rescue workers. They shouted to each other. They were still finding people, still moving rocks and charred timber to open pathways to the basements. But they were also carrying stretchers covered with sheets. A row of these stretchers lay on the ground. A woman ran up to the men in orange vests. "Have you seen my son? My son? My son and his children? They live on this street." Lived. There was no more street. Nobody lived here anymore. The woman ran on to the next set of rescue workers. My son, my son. Her words stabbed me behind my breastbone. My eyes followed her frantic path up the street. Mathilde? Megs was tugging my arm. Mathilde, we should go home. I hung up my coat and scarf, tossed my shoes into the robe by the door, and thundered upstairs. I opened my math textbook and answer booklet on the small desk in our room. I sharpened my pencil, found my extra eraser, and wrote the assignment heading. And then I just sat there, tapping the pencil. I closed my eyes. I could hear Mother's voice pleading with the rescue workers. My husband, have you seen him? He's on street safety patrol. My husband. I wrapped my arms around myself, as if to shut out her imaginary screaming. I rocked back and forth. Sweat beaded on my upper lip. The voice changed to be Father's as he climbed through rubble in an oddly orange, smoky dawn. My wife, my daughters, we lived here on this street. Big! The shock of the strength of his voice jolted my eyes open. Big! I jumped to my feet and flew downstairs. Father was home from the post office. He hadn't even taken off his own hat yet, but he was holding one of my shoes. How did your shoes end up looking like this? My shoes were caked with white and gray powder, like Father's had been this morning. My coat and scarf were lightly dusted too. I reached up and smoothed my hair. When I took my hand away, it was covered with the same grime. They must have... But my shoes wouldn't have gone anywhere on their own. I mean, You disobeyed me. No, I stepped off the bottom stair, getting closer to him. You said not to take Cammy, and I didn't. You can ask her. She came straight home. And you think I meant it was okay for you to go if you got rid of Cammy? I lowered my eyes and mumbled. I wasn't getting around what you said. I really thought you weren't worried about me the way you worried about Cammy. Not about what you'd see, just physical danger. Walls that can fall down hours later, or keep burning, or... I know. I saw. He nodded and handed me my shoe. Get the brush and clean these outside, before your mother sees. I picked up the brush and my other shoe. I stepped outside without my coat and started knocking the powder off my shoes. My breath, too. White rose in the frigid night air. I tensed, waiting for the sirens. End of chapter 4.